Hey, everybody. Welcome back to another Foundations of Literacy Distance Learning Academy. It's me, Mr. Ahrens. I'm going to go ahead and get started here. Hope you guys are doing all right today. So, this is your Distance Learning Academy for Foundations of Literacy, and today is session number 18. And today we're going to be reading an article that's on StudySync called Happily Ever After, and asking ourselves the question, why are fairy tales so popular? And we're going to be using this article to help us with this objective that students will read and annotate a nonfiction article by noticing contrast and contradictions, which is a reading strategy that I'm going to teach you today. So I thought this would be a good blast article because if there's one thing that I've been doing during this quarantine, it's reading a lot of books to my kids. And a lot of those books happen to be fairy tales, stuff that you would expect to see in children's books. And so when I came across this article about Happily Ever After, I just thought it fit so perfectly with what I was reading. And I also thought it was an interesting article. However, there were some things in it that when I read it, I was a little bit surprised, or it kind of um, made me think about the knowledge that I already had about fairy tales. And so I think it's a good one for us to use this reading strategy here, which is called contrast and contradictions. And basically, what these two words here mean are differences. A contrast and a contradiction are differences or things that go against what you already think. And so, what I'm going to teach you today is that while you're reading and the author shows you a difference between what you already know and what they're telling you in the text, or a difference between two things in the text, that you should stop and you should ask yourself this question: what is the difference and why does it matter? So essentially, what we're going to be doing is when we're reading and we notice something in the text that goes against what we think or is like surprising information for us, then we're going to stop and ask ourselves this question. Or if you're ever reading a nonfiction text and the author is like comparing two things and they show you a difference, then that's also a good place to stop and to ask yourself this question. When you answer this question, it can help you to pick up on the main idea, understand the author's purpose, or basically just think a little bit deeper about the text and to get more meaning out of it, which is one of the reasons that we read, is to get meaning out of the text. So I'm going to show you what this looks like in practice as I come back to, or I come to StudySync. And this is what your screen will look like when you sign in today. And your blast should be somewhere on here. It says Happily Ever After. It's, ooh, I'm floating now. So you're just going to click on that. And it will come to this. And just to orient you with the page, this is the article here. I will ask you to answer this question, which is why are fairy tales so popular? And then also take this quick poll over here. So you'll just select something here and hit submit. Oh, there's also this. There's a number here, and so you think about like, okay, what could that number mean? And then when you hit that question mark, it'll give you the answer. So kind of like a little piece of trivia. I'm going to put my picture over there to cover that up. Okay, so in the directions here, it says, while you're reading, notice and note contrast and contradictions. Then ask yourself, what is the difference and why does it matter? And then write your answer as an annotation in the article. So I found a contrast and contradiction in this first paragraph here. One thing I do want to tell you is that you're probably not going to find a contrast and contradiction in every single paragraph, but it is something to keep on the lookout for because it can help you think about the text. So let me read this to you and talk to you about what I was thinking when I found this contrast and contradiction. So again, this is why are fairy tales so popular? Article says, a fairy tale, by definition, is a simple children's story featuring fantastical characters in a magical setting. A beautiful young princess is trapped in a tower. A peasant boy acquires a bag of magical beans. A vain old queen is driven mad with jealousy. The most beloved fairy tales have evolved over time, but one thing has remained constant. They've amused, scared, and captivated children for centuries. Modern iterations like Frozen and Tangled take classic fairy tales and re envision them anew. Yet, many contemporary audiences are still unaware of how much the stories of today are rooted in this storytelling tradition. Now, you see that I have it highlighted, and that is because when I was reading, I noticed this as a contrast or a contradiction to something that I already thought. I kind of knew that fairy tales were old, but I didn't know that it was so rooted in like a storytelling tradition, which makes me think of, people have been telling these stories for many, many years. Um, and especially with stories like Frozen and Tangled, movies that I've seen 100 times, I didn't know that those came from old fairy tales. So, because I noticed this difference, I stopped and I asked myself this question: what was the difference and why does it matter? So, I just talked to you about what the difference was, and here is the note that I made for myself. I said, this is important because people might think that they do not like old stories, but if they like new movies, then they might actually like the older stories that they come from. So, when I asked myself this question, I started thinking, well, sometimes, especially when I talk to students, they don't think that they like older text. But I started thinking that, well, maybe the author is telling me this because if you like Frozen or you like Tangled, then chances are you would like the story that it comes from many, many years ago. And so that's helping me maybe come up with a main idea for this article, or just think a little bit deeper about what I'm reading here and connect with it a little bit more. I really know I'm comprehending if I can answer this question and think about it a little bit deeper. So, in the rest of today's time that you're spending with Foundations, I'd like for you to continue to read this article. It's about 5 paragraphs long. As I said, you're not going to find a contrast and contradiction maybe in every single paragraph. But I did at least see one more in paragraph 4 that was a contrast and contradiction for me. So I would like for you to read and to see if you can find any more contrasts and contradictions and answer the question. When you do, be sure that you make yourself a note by just highlighting it and editing. And that way I'll be able to see what you write on my end. Okay? Don't forget to do these things as well. So, just to review what we talked about today is this strategy called contrast and contradictions. And that's whenever you read and you notice a difference between what the author is telling you and what you think, or they're comparing two things and they're talking about differences, it's important to stop and ask yourself, what is the difference and why does that matter? Today, I'd like for you to read that article on StudySync, annotate by summarizing and noticing and noting those contrasts and contradictions, write your annotations so that I can see them, and then answer the response question. Of course, after you finish that, I also would like for you to read your independent reading book for 25 minutes. You can notice and note important parts of that story. You can notice and note contrasts and contradictions in your books as well. And that's a really good place for you to stop and put a sticky note in or to think about it a little bit more. And then finally, do complete the ticket to leave on the Google Classroom so I can keep up with your progress. That's all. I hope you guys have a really great Tuesday, and I'll be back with another video and some work on Wednesday. And stay safe. Don't blow away in this wind. Bye bye.